Good morning, Morai v'Rabotai, Beruchim Habayim. We're continuing our Masechet Succah, and we're on Daf Lamed Tet, Amud Bet, about 9 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned as is Chut Rufa Shalema for Michael ben Nahid, for Rachel Simcha bat Nahid, Esther Bracha bat Chaya, Avraham Jamshid ben Tajgol, Betoch Shar Kol Cholei Yisrael, Shalav Rufa Shalema Bezat Hashem. Amen. This month's learning of the community has been dedicated graciously by the Shea family, Dayan family, Cohen families. It should be an ultimate zchut for all their mishpachot. Amen. So the Gemara started the concept. The last thing we discussed was the story of Daniel, because it says Vayeman lahem hamelech, that Nebuchadnezzar's office, palace, basically provided food, and that is called the man. So we said you only could give money in a transaction to an Amaretz on Shvi'it when you are providing them only maximum of mazon, shalosh seudot, of 3 meals worth of money. But more than that, we don't trust them. Well, that day's worth of money, we could trust, because they're going to go buy food for themselves. But if you're giving them money more than that day, and they're going to go maybe put it in their piggy bank, and then they're going to use it after Shat HaBi'ur, just like the actual fruits of Shvi'it, you cannot keep after Shat HaBi'ur. The money that has taken on Kedushat Shvi'it also you cannot keep and spend after Shat HaBi'ur. And when you give too much money to Amaretz, and he's not going to have cheshbon, which one is not money of Shvi'it, it gets mixed with his money in his safe, then obviously he may come to spend them after Shat HaBi'ur, which will be obviously a problem. So therefore we don't give them more money. But Talmid Hacham, even if you give him too much, he's going to have a bundle for the money of Shvi'it. He's going to be very careful with it, and so on and so forth. We mentioned the potential problem for items that could be of Shvi'it. For instance, you have masrot problems as well. But nevertheless, Shvi'it is a problem for Israeli products, not just wine of Shnat Shemitah, but also let's say avocado creams, which is like it's an Israeli product be'etzem. So these are things that a person may not think about, but once you read this Gemara, it's like, wait a second, this wine is from Shnat Shemitah, and 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, it surfaces in the market. Obviously, that's something to be careful with. Now, says the Gemara, if that is correct, that you have the etrog of Shvi'it, and you have to be so careful. So what are you telling me to do exactly? You're telling me, okay, pay for the lulav, a little extra, to get the etrog for free, right? Do a havla'ah. Say, this lulav, a dairy lulav, amazing, $300, right? Well, it's not a joke. It's actually getting to that level by itself. But nevertheless, says the Gemara, who said that lulav is mutar? Why wouldn't the lulav itself be a problem of Shvi'it? So says the Gemara, Iachi lulav nami. Lulav also has to have the same issue of lulav of Shvi'it. So no, Gemara says, lulav, we're talking about the lulav that the majority of its growth was in Shana Hashishit, and then it was picked on Shnat HaShemitah. That's what we're talking about. So says the Gemara, Bar Shishit, lulav bar Shishit hanichnas leShvi'it hu. We're talking about the lulav that its majority of its growth was on the 6th year. Now, why is this significant? Let me give you a little preface. Trees, we go for Shvi'it after Sha'at HaChanata. Chanata is the sprouting, the beginning of the growth. So therefore, by lulav, lulav is a tree. And by trees, we go after Sha'at HaChanata. So therefore, if you have a tree that the majority of it grew, or the fruit, the majority of it grew in Sha'at Charata and on was in Shana Shishit in the 6th year, and you happen to pick it on Shnat HaShemitah, what's the halacha? That's not perot shvi'it. It's not mutar, right? That's by tree. Gemara says that's why By lulav, we don't have a problem. The lulav we are talking about is a lulav that grew in the 6th year. You picked it on the 7th year. Hazaku baruch. I said, wait a second. Are you listening to what you're saying? I'm asking you, what's the difference between lulav and etrog? So however you slice this, I'm going to turn the question to you. So etrog is going to be the same problem now. Ihachi, says the Gemara, etrog nami bat shishida nichneset leshvi'it. Who? It's going to be the same exact problem, because obviously we're talking about the same time. You went on a trip to go cut yourself a proper etrog and proper lulav. So if the lulav is what grew in Shanat HaShishit, etrog, you're talking about the same thing. The Mishnah does not differentiate between that. Mara says, yes, correct. This is the $1 million question. You know why? Because etrog is different than all of the other trees. Etrog is different. Says the Gemara, etrog batar lekita azlinan. Etrog is the only fruit that we go after the lekita, not after the chanata. We will see soon what the logic possibly could be for this, differentiating etrog, which is clearly a fruit tree, like any other fruit tree, from all the other fruits. So says the Gemara, "Veha ben Rabbi Gamliel uben Rabbi Eliezer le'inyan shvi'it etrog batar chanata azlinan." Wait a second. We know of 2 Tanaim that talk about this concept, and both of them hold that when it comes to etrog for shvi'it, we go after the growing, the chanata, not after the time that you pick the fruit. You go after the time that start growing the fruit. Ditnan, as we have it in a Mishnah, right? Etrog shaveh le'ilan begimel derachim. Etrog is equivalent of any other tree in 3 different ways. Legabe 3 halachot. When it comes to 3 halachic concepts, it's identical to trees. And in 1 derech, uleyerek bederech echad. And in 1 concept, 1 halachic aspect, it is identical to a vegetable. And says the Gemara, Shaveh le'ilan begimel derachim. This, that it is identical to other trees in 3 ways, is le'orla, ul revai, ul shvi'it. For orla, we have every tree that you plant for first 3 years, it is not usable. It's asur ba'ana. That's only for trees, not for bushes that are not considered trees, right? You have this, obviously, people know that many of what we call trees are not halachically simple if they're considered trees. For instance, right? Maran Shulchan Aruch writes in Chod Berachot, Mozesh, right? In Arabic. Mozesh in Arabic. Mark, do you know what that means? No. Right? Like all the other people around this table know because they speak Arabic and Farsi, which moz is banana, right? So Mozesh, we say, you have seen Mozesh tree, right? It's a tree. But we deal with it as a hadama because it doesn't have some of the properties of a normal tree. It's big enough, but it's giz'o machalif. It's not machalif. Or sometimes you have other things like a strawberry or other berries, right? So strawberry, machloket, or for that matter, ananas, right? What does that mean? No, pineapple. Pineapple, which is in Hebrew ananas or in Farsi, that would be also something that you would look at the fruit and say, oh, this comes from this like 50 feet tall tree. It doesn't, right? It's a small thing, and therefore it's safek, whether it is ha'etz or adama. And you'll say, and you have other elements as well. Like, now we're not getting into cashews and other things. But nevertheless, there are questionable plantations And when it comes to those that don't have all the properties of a tree, so orla becomes the question. Orla is only for trees. So you scratch it and say, well, is etrog orla? Yes, it is. It's a tree. And therefore, orla is a thing. The first 3 years, he cannot use asur ba'ana. 4th year, it has netaravai also. When it comes to netaravai, we mentioned that the 4th year, it's not asur ba'ana. You could use it, but it is like the halachot of Maser Sheni. Yes, Kedusha, you have to take it to Yerushalayim. Right, that's netaravai. So etrog has netaravai as well. So the first 4 years, you're on a hook. Says the Gemara, the third one that is identical to a tree is the Shvi'it. When it comes to Shvi'it, it is identical to all the other trees in regards to when do you count from. You count from Shat Chanita. You count from the time that it grows, not the time that you cut it off. You pick it from the fruit, from the tree. And therefore, if it's a Shishit going to Shvi'it, right? What would be the halacha? It's not Perot Shvi'it. It shouldn't be. So you're telling me, says the Gemara, that etrog is different than all the other fruits. We follow the time of picking, not the time that it started growing. Over here it says that it's identical to all the other trees that we go after Shat Chanata. So Yerek b'derech echad, what's the identical halacha to Yerek? Says the Gemara, Yerek b'derech echad is shebeshat lekitato isuro. That when you gather it, that moment determines what type of masrot you're going to give. Now, why is this important? Because after you give teruma, and after you give maser rishon to Kohen and Levi, right, teruma to Kohen, maser rishon to Levi, you have to separate maser sheni, right, second tithe. Now, this second tithe really depends what year you're in. The 3rd and the 6th year, what you normally would call maser sheni would now become Maser Ani, right? And it goes to Anim. So imagine if I have a Yerek that grew in, it started growing in the 6th year, or for this, it's the 2nd year, and I picked it on the 3rd year. What is this? Is it Maser Sheni or Maser Ani? Well, it's going to be Maser Ani because you go after the time that you pick it. Why is that, by the way? You know why that is? Why not? An Ilan is not like that. A tree is not like that. What's the difference? The difference is, normally by fruits of trees, they don't need any additional watering. The water that comes from Megashamim in the winter, when the trees look dead, right? That settles in the ground. Already the roots by Tu B'Shvat, there's a lot going on in the company of this tree. It looks dead from outside, but the sap going in and out, completely ready for producing anything that's going to come in the next 2-3 months. It's already set in motion with the water of the Geshamim. So therefore, everything is set to go from Shat Chanata. When it starts growing, it has everything it needs, right? So of course you go after Shat Chanata. But there are certain items that the watering at the end is more important than the watering in the beginning. Namely, vegetables, right? The more they grow, the more water they need now, this moment. Now, the reason for that is because the roots are not obviously deep, so the first few inches of the ground, you have a sunny day and wavila, that's it. Everything is dry, right? So you need to constantly water them. So therefore, that which happens at the end is ikar. It's very sensible, very logical, right? Now, we just learned together to Dapimego that etrog is the one tree that is gadel al kol ma'im. Remember that? That grows on all water. That means megashamim is not sufficient for it. You have to be constantly watering it. And therefore, we could understand why there would be a machloket about etrog, if it's like regular fruits or is it like vegetables? Because on one hand, it does do a lot of its growth, like other trees, from deep roots that it has in the ground, like a regular tree. But it also needs a lot of additional water afterwards. So which one is it? It's this gray area. We understand it. This whole thing is, once you understand the reason, it's extremely sensible, right? And that will be machloket Tanaim that we will learn right now. Therefore, says the Gemara, shebeshad lekitato isuro, that etrog is like vegetables that beshad lekitato isuro. You go after the year that you pick it. So therefore, if you pick this etrog on the third year of Shemitah, it's going to be Maser Sheni or Maser Ani. Maser Ani, you grew 80% in the second year, doesn't matter. You go after the lekita, not after the charata. Who is this? Divrei Rabban Gamliel. That's what Rabban Gamliel holds. Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Rabbi Eliezer says, no. Even for Maser Sheni versus Maser Ani, it's like a regular tree. Because at the end of the day, it has roots. It's like a tree. Says Rabbi Eliezer Omer, etrog shaveh leilan lechol davar. It is equivalent of a regular tree, identical in every halacha. In Orla, in Netarevai, in Shvi'it, and in Maserot. All four items is identical with regular trees. Fine. So that's now what's the Gemara want from this? However you slice this, both Rabban Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer hold, right, unanimously, that when it comes to Shvi'it, etrog is like other trees. So where in the world are you getting this notion that for Shvi'it, etrog is different than lulav? Remember, how did we get into this? Because we asked this obvious question. You're telling me pay for the lulav and cover behavla'ah the etrog. And we said, well, what's the difference between etrog and lulav? And he said, lulav grew the majority in shishit and it was picked on Shvi'it, we go after karata. So etrog also said, no, etrog is different. Etrog is the one tree that we go after lekita. So wait a second. Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Eliezer, both of them say, when it comes to Shvit, you go after Chanata, like any other tree. So where are you getting this notion that etrog is the one tree that's different, that when it comes to Shvit, you go after the time of picking, not the time of growth? That's the million-dollar question. So says Gemara, correct. You have these two Tanaim, but there is a third Tana. It's not mentioned in this Mishnah that you brought over here, right? This Mishnah that you brought does not discuss, this is the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah Yudalet. Says the Gemara, Hu da Amar, third line, Hu da Amar ki ai Tana. It's another Shita in Tanaim, and we have it in the Braita. It's not in the Mishnah, mentioned in the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah we said, but it is in the Braita over here. The Amar Rabbi Yossi said, this is in the Braita, Avtulmus He'id Mishum Chamisha Zkenim. Avtulmus gave a testimony in the name of 5 Zekenim that etrog achar lekita lemasir, that by etrog we go after the time that you pick it when it comes in regards to maserot, right? Concerning maserot, we go after lekita like what? Vegetables. Whose shita is that? Rabban Gamliel, right? I'm familiar with that. And then it says, V'rabotenu, this is the key. V'rabotenu nimnu be'usha. And Chachamim, one of the things that they decided in Usha was the temporary makom of Sanhedrin, right? When Sanhedrin moved to Usha, they made a lot of takarot. We've spoken about this at length in the previous Masechtot. So one of the things that happened in the city of Usha was Rabotenu Nimru be'Usha. They counted up, basically head count, and they decided ve'amru ben le'maser, ben le'shvi'it, both for maser and for shvi'it is going to be like what? It's going to be like vegetables. Not just for Maaser, like Rabban Gamliel, but also for Shvi'it is going to be like vegetables that you go after Shat, lekita, not Chanata. Now, when you read this Braita, it's a little choppy because it starts as Rabbi Yossi said, in the name of Avtulmus, that he was me'id in the name of 5 Zekenim, that when it comes to Maaser, it's like vegetable. You go after Shad Lekita. And all of a sudden it says, but in Usha they decided, even for Shvi'it, who talked about Shvi'it? We're talking about Maaser in the Braita. Why do you all of a sudden introduce Shvi'it? The Braitas are written usually in a way that there is a topic of discussion, and you go back and forth. Shvi'it was never a topic of discussion even in this. This is a parenthetic issue, right? In other words, we already know what the Gemara is going to do with this, but we open a little tangent parentheses, says, wait a second, by the way, who spoke about Shvi'it over here? Wow, how does that, it doesn't read well, the Braita, right? It's a parenthesis, right? Not a necessity for our purposes. We already got what we want from this Braita, but the Gemara just deals with this in parentheses and goes on. Says Gemara, Shvi'it mandach Hashem, who spoke about Shvi'it? When you tell me Aftulmus in the name of 5 Zikanim spoke about this, spoke only about Maaserot. He didn't even mention Shvi'it. So why you jump into Shvi'it from the name of Rabotenu in Usha, right? So this is what I know. This is a choppy Braita. And we have a lot of these choppy Braitas. That's Chasur Mechsera V'Achikatani. That the Braita, again, the Mishnayot and the Braitot, they had an objective of being short and poetic, right? Because you have to remember Mishnayot Baal Peh. Remember, this is something that whether your IQ was 180 or just 100 or just 80, you had to remember the Mishnayot Baal Peh. Everyone sang it to themselves, right? And therefore, it has to be short, and it's short as possible. It has to be also in a way that it kind of has some sort of rhyme. So the wording of the Braita Mishnah is super important. Right? Therefore, many times you have this like chasuri mechsera v'achikatani, that it is chopped down in a way that you, if you pay attention, you understand what he's saying, but it's not explicitly verbalizing the point. So says the Gemara, chasuri mechsera v'achikatani. By the way, I always say chasuri mechsera v'achikatani is, you know, when a person is chasuri mechsera, when a person doesn't have anything else, is chaser this, chaser that, you think, oh, those are the generations that people learned, Hachikatani. When a person has a whole lot going on, right? Marbe nechasim, marbe de'agav. When you have a lot, it's even harder to learn than people who don't have anything. Chasur mechsera v'achikatani. Those generations that didn't have anything, like, you know, the Rabbi Yaakov Hillel Shlita put out a sefer, Shevet Achim, a number of years ago. The Machon, he has a printing press called Machon Avat Shalom. So they put out a sefer of the Aderet. Aderet is the nickname for Rabbi Eliyahu David Rabinovitz Tumim, right? Aderet. So he was one of the Geonei Olam, tremendous person. Rav Shmuel Salant, who was the Rabashi Yerushalayim, went to Russia, went to Europe to bring a person. He lived a very blessed life well into his 90s. And they needed a replacement, right? So he went and he recruited him. He was in his 30s, upper 30s, early 40s. He was recruited to come and kind of like, you know, little by little take the mantle of the tzibur. Unfortunately, he died earlier than Rav Shmuel Salant. He was dying very young, and he, Baruch Hashem, was blessed with a tremendous life. But he wrote a sefer that was recently published with his twin brother, Tumim, right? The Omim, the twins, before their bar mitzvah, right? They published the sefer, Chidushim and Shas, right? Called Shevet Achim. And in this sefer, he quotes, you know, it says, Ayin b'mash katavti b'chidushai al Masechet Keretot v'yevamot chulin. They already had written Chidushim on half of Shas at that age, right? So that correct, it was genius people, they're tremendous people. But said that Yaakov Ilai said, you know why? Because we have so much mishugat in our life, like with the phones and with the things and with the news and with that. They had nothing. No distraction. They had nothing. They had no toys. Some of the people who grew up over here, 85 years ago, like myself, they played with buttons, like, toys, with small round pebbles and stones and this, and they learned. They woke up in the morning with the thoughts of the Rashba and Tosafot, and that's what they did. Sometimes less is more is less in that way. But nevertheless, says the way it really should be mentioned is Hachikatani, Etrog Achar lekita lemaser, right? Etrog, we go after the time of picking for when it comes to masrot. Ve'achar chanata lishvi'it. But when it comes to shvi'it, we go after when it started growing, right? And that is the chamisha zekenim. In other words, what the Braita should say is, Rabbi Yossi said, Av Tulmus was me'id, he testified in the name of chamisha zekenim, that by etrog, it depends. For shvi'it, you go after the growth, the beginning. For masrot, you go after the end. And on that, the Braita says, but Rabotenu be'usha, Chachamim in Usha, they decided not like that. They said both for masrot and for shvit, we go after the lekita like by vegetations, by vegetables. V'rabotenu nimru be'usha, ve'amru etrog batar lekita ben maser ben shvit. That by etrog, we go, it's the one fruit, the one tree, that it has all the halachot of vegetables when it comes to both shvit and also to masrot. So now we have a Tana. Now we found a Tana for our Mishnah over here, that when I tell you that you could pay money for your lulav and do havla'ah, pay a little more and cover the etrog and get the etrog for free, right? We're talking about what? We're talking about the scenario that they grew in 6th year and you picked it on 7th year. And therefore you have this difference, this dynamic, dichotomy of 6th and 7th, where it concerns other trees versus etrog. But other trees, aka over here, for our purposes, lulav, you go after chanata, after the beginning. All the trees are like that. And therefore, a lulav of shishit going on to shvi'it is going to be judged like shishit, and it's not kadosh. It doesn't have kedushat shvi'it. And etrog, that's going from shishit to shvi'it, it does. Because that's the one fruit that you go after the time of picking, not the time that it grew. Okay? Everything fits, is gewaldig, right? Etrog batar lekita ben lemaser ben leshvit. Now, says the Gemara, now the bomb kasha. It says, wait a second. All of the time, since it's been an Amud, that we are equating lulav and etrog. We say, oh, shishit, shvit, vit, lekita, charata. Who says at all it's kadosh? It's a piece of wood. What's lulav? We're not talking about the dates. We're talking about the wood. It's leaves. Right? Who says that lulav should have any kedusha altogether? When you chop off wood and you want to put it in your storage for your fireplace, does that have kedushat shvit? No. So what exactly what are you even talking about? Right? Why does it have to be even kadosh? We have had this assumption that lulav has kedusha. Why is lulav kadosh? B'kedushat shvit. Right? That's like a simple question. It's like, wait a second. We're assuming that this is kawa. Why is it kadosh? Right? Says the Gemara. Tama the lulav bar shishit hanichnas l'shvit. You're telling me that the lulav, the reason it doesn't have kedushat shvit is because it grew majority of its growth on the 6th year, which infers how the shvit kadosh, that if it would have grown in shvit, it would be kadosh. That's what you're inferring, right? Amai. Why? Etzim be'almahu. It is wood, and wood does not have kedushat shvit. Ve'etzim en b'hem mishum kedushat shvit. How do I know that etzim don't have kedushat shvit? The Tanya, right? It's a Braita. Right? It's not his Mishnah. Everyone knows this, right? When you have 2 noons is a Mishnah and 1 noon is Braita, right? The rule of thumb. This is the mistake. The Tanya, we learn the Braita. Ale kanim v'ale gefanim she gevavan lechova. If you are gathering ale gefanim and ale kanim, and you're using them to put them in storage for fuel, right? Al pnei hasadeh lekatan la'achila yesh ba'en mishum kedusha. If you want to eat them, sometimes people eat these alei gefanim, right? They make dolme and all kinds of different things from it, right? If you're doing it for that, fine. Yesh ba'en mishum kedushat shvi'it. Lekatan le'etzim, but if you're doing it for fuel, en ba'en mishum kedushat shvi'it. It's wood. So this quasi item that could be eaten could be used for fuel. So it depends on your kavanah. But it's clear that even this that could be edible, if you do it for fuel, it's going to be no kedushat shvi'it. So for sure wood doesn't have kedushat shvi'it. So what are you talking about by lulav that should have kedushat shvi'it? Who did you see eating lulav last time, right? So says the Gemara, Shani, you never know. Okay?
Wake up.
This is the vegetarian generation. That's it. So says the Gemara. Lekatan le'etzimen ba'im mishum kedushat shvi'it shani hatam damar kra. It's different because there, the pasuk says, "Oh, we are completely out of time." Let's actually wait and pick this up, Bezrat Hashem, in the next shiur.